Well, good Thursday morning, everybody. I'm Marlon Bowling with you, your tour guide to the ag commodities. Glad to have you with us here today. Well, being Thursday and the morning after, the USDA WASDE reports, we'll see how the trade wants to go after the dust all settles here. And it was kind of a chaotic day yesterday, just big reversals in the soybean market to the downside after the numbers came out. Corn followed along, the wheat went down. It was just kind of a nasty affair after the report came out. Well, let's take a look at the weekly export sales data that just came out here mere moments ago, shall we? Okay, on the corn, we actually had sales of 939,200 tons this past week. The old crop portion of that was 468,400 tons. You know what? That was up 86% than what we had a week ago. Big gains in the corn. Now, we did have that one fair size sale that we had reported here a few days ago, so we wondered what that would be, but that's not a bad number for corn considering the time of year. Soybeans, only 289,800 tons. Now, what I do is I combine the old crop and new crop together to come up with these numbers. The old crop portion of that was down 57% from last week. On the soy meal, 172,600 tons this time around. That was lower on the old crop portion of it from a week ago. The wheat, 395,700 tons. Well, we'll take a look also at grain sorghum and cotton and rice. Grain sorghum, 353,300 tons. Look at that. That was a big number. Upland cotton, only 74,100 running bales. That was just the opposite. That was down sharply. We had the rice at only 4,000 tons sold this past week. And here to take a look at our overnight trade, let's go to the board and go to our quotes provided by bar chart. We'll start with the corn. Yeah, we had corn coming back overnight a little bit. September up 3, December was 3 higher in the overnight trade. In the soybeans, look at them bounce this morning. My goodness, I was surprised when I came into work this morning how much they had rebounded. Only 3 cents, not even that, from our high of the evening trade. August finished 22.5 higher at 1466 3/4 after a bad technical close yesterday. November soybeans gained 20 3/4 overnight at 1348.5. Can't wait to hear what that's all about. In the wheat in Chicago, September was just a penny and a quarter higher at 634. So it didn't gain back very much after selling off yesterday. Kansas City, September only a half higher at 803.5. And in spring wheat in Minneapolis, we had September trading 6 higher at 859.5. And that was 11 cents off of its overnight low, only a couple of pennies from our high of the overnight trade. We have Brian Hoops here to talk about it. He's with Midwest Market Solutions in Springfield, Missouri. Wow, the choppiness continued overnight here, Brian, and into the close of the Globex. Look at the soybeans rebound. You can't hold them down, apparently. How come?
Yeah, good morning, Marlon. Soybeans in the overnight trade, when they opened, they did not take out the day session lows. And so we started to see a little short covering develop. And that kind of spread throughout the overnight markets into the morning hours. There's also a little bit of concern out there that, we've done some not really in chart damage to the soybean market like we have to the corn market or wheat futures. And so the bean oil pattern remains kind of technically bullish. Soybean futures still remain technically in an uptrending market. So that's attracting some trade attention. The forecasts are really not all that ideal. There's a lot of heat in the long-term forecast that would possibly be detrimental to soybean yields. Some heat, some dryness combined with a dry August will hurt those soybean yields. And of course, as you know, USDA did not make any changes to those numbers. Yesterday in the supply and demand report, they chose to wait until the August report to update any yield data. And there's that concern out there that even though we've had a decent start to July, maybe the end of July is going to be drier than desired and actually hurt those yields.
I get the feeling that the trade is kind of skeptical of the numbers that USDA had yesterday for soybeans. One or the other seems out of whack. Either the planted acreage report seemed awfully low, or the numbers yesterday maybe more than made up for that. I don't know what was going on there, but it just seems like the trade has a little bit of disbelief this morning.
Yeah, the USDA historically has not made many changes to the soybean production numbers in the July report. In fact, only 2 times out of the last 26 years, that was in 2012 and 2019, So it's not unprecedented that they would not make any changes. And so that's what they did yesterday. But they did have all this flexibility in both corn and soybeans with those big acreage variations from the June 30th report to then come in and make some major changes to the demand side of the balance sheets. They cut soybean exports by 125 million bushels, which I think is kind of head scratching. They cut crush by 10 million bushels, which is very surprising given that a lot of our monthly crush reports are at record levels and well above year-ago levels. So it's a little surprising that they would make that cut already. And that has, I think, some of the trade in, kind of this mode of disbelief of what the numbers said yesterday from the government.
Kind of follows the attitudes of some of the jobs data and economic numbers that come out these days. All right, we'll come back in a moment, and Brian, we'll take a look at the beef and pork exports next. All right, we're talking with Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions. Well, we were talking about the weekly export sales numbers, and then just to put a cherry on the top here, Brian, you were talking about some news that just came in as well, and it's related to exports, but it's not the weekly variety, it's the overnight variety.
Yeah, exactly. Yesterday we had a sale of soybean meal, 100,000 metric tons to an unknown destination. This morning, 315,000 metric tons of soybeans sold to Mexico, and that's for the new crop variety. So we've heard some reports, or some rumors anyway, that China has been purchasing U.S. soybeans, and we've not seen any confirmation of that, but Mexico stepped in. They were a big, aggressive buyer of new crop soybeans, and that, I think is certainly going to help out the case for the rally in the overnight.
Yeah, that definitely would explain part of that support this morning. Now, I want to take a look at the beef and pork export numbers that came out this morning. The beef number that was reported sold last week had to be a disappointment. Under 10,000 tons, 9,900 tons is all. And the pork, 24,500 tons. That would be down a little bit as well from the week before. What happened here with our beef sales anyway? China did buy a little bit, but only 1,400 tons.
Yeah, I was going to mention that the one bright spot in these beef and pork exports is that China showed up as a buyer again of beef in a small amount, and China was a pretty aggressive buyer of pork. Almost half of the sales of the pork was to China, so that's a little bit of an encouraging sign that they're coming back to the market. And with the dollar breaking to several month lows, we should see demand start to pick up for beef, pork, as well as our grains. Mexico had been a really aggressive buyer over the last several weeks of both beef and pork. They backed off last week, and I think that's the reason why our sales are so disappointing, is there was no one else to step in and take that big purchase that Mexico has been making. And the futures market had a pretty wild ride yesterday. The Packers, I think, will this morning start out bidding for cattle, trying to get something bought, using the break in the futures as an excuse to try and get these cattle bought at lower money because their margins are getting squeezed.
Good point. I'm glad you brought that up. We'll see what happens here today. Brian, I appreciate the comments. Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions. He's in Springfield, Missouri.